Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Coram and Justin Nielsen here with a look at the stock market action today, where we did see early gains fade, but there were still a number of notable stock movers today.
Yeah, so we'll take a look at a few of them, starting with a solar stock, a lot of movement in the solar area. So JinkoSolar. We'll also take a look at Ashland and Atkore.
All right, let's do it. First, let's take a look at those major indexes. So today, the NASDAQ finishing up 0.4%. The S&P 500 up 0.3%. The Dow just a slightly positive, up less than 0.1%. And the Russell 2000 up some 0.3%. So we're continuing to hold in this same trading range here, Justin. The NASDAQ finishing above the 12,000 mark. So not a whole lot of upward progress over the last week and today, but we're definitely not breaking down. So good to
Right,
see
exactly.
what we're seeing.
Yeah, so it's exactly as you said. It's not upward progress, but it's not downward progress either. It's just kind of sideways, and that might be the best thing for this market right here. So one of the things that has been a little bit tricky is that extra volatility. You look at some of the days that we've had, and it seems like if you don't move 2%, well, then you're just not really trying hard. And that could be either way. You're seeing moves of 2% to the upside or downside. So the fact that we've traded inside, so what does inside mean? Well, if you look at the highs and lows of just 2 days ago, okay, we have basically stayed inside that trading range. And so when you do that, and when you kind of get that inside action, it just kind of says, hey, you know what, we're consolidating, we're kind of thinking about what we've done, and then when you get a break either to the upside above the high of 2 days ago or down below the low of 2 days ago, then you get a little bit of a sense of direction. But until then, sideways action here isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially if you have some stocks that are looking like they're setting up. So, and look, if the volatility can decrease a little bit, that's just going to make it a little bit easier to manage your risk, right? One of the things that happens when you have a more volatile market and you're trying to set your stops, well, if you set them too tight, you're going to get shaken out. But if you don't set them tight enough, well, then you're going to potentially take some larger losses. So it's definitely a balancing act, and lower volatility helps in that regard.
Yes, it does. All right, let's also take a look at the S&P 500. Similar story here with the S&P, still above the 21-day, an inside day from 2 days ago, and still below the 50-day line. Anything else to report here for the S&P, Justin?
Not really. I mean, I think you kind of nailed it. We are staying above those levels. You mentioned 12,000 on the NASDAQ, 4,100 here on the S&P 500. So again, it's nice that we've kind of just held above those levels, and we haven't breached those. Certainly, it's not great when you see a strong day fade into the close. And I mean, the fading really happened pretty early on in the session. The NASDAQ was up almost 2% intraday, and then it just kind of steadily declined. So that's not great action, but if you kind of look at either one of those indexes, I wouldn't call it a stalling day either, because we are still, again, inside that day of 2 days ago. So usually with stalling, what you see is you see some upward progress, and then that upward progress starts. So because we had that upward progress earlier, and now we're just kind of inside, it's not going to be a stalling day today. But we'll see what the next few days. If we can continue going sideways, that's great. Otherwise, look for a break to either end.
Yeah. All right. Some nice details there. We can also just quickly look at the Dow here. Like I said, finishing just ever so slightly positive, still in the same trading range over the last couple of sessions here and below its 50-day line, but getting pretty close to the 50-day. So we'll have to see if in addition to these recent highs, it can get to the 50-day. That's going to be the next key test is, can we get above that 50-day? Or is that going to be resistance for us?
Yeah, and not only can we get above it, can we stay above it?
Yes.
I mean, that's the issue that we're seeing right now with the 21-day lines on a lot of these indexes. We've gotten above it, but now the question is, can we stay above that line?
Yes.
You know what? We might as well go ahead and take a look. Just you're probably going to go there, but the 10-year Treasury. Well, here's the Russell 2000, and the 10-year Treasury also. It's just notable that the 10-year Treasury we got above that 3% level again. So that's something that I think a lot of folks have been watching, and it's no big surprise. With the talk of the Fed, and especially those job numbers, kind of not really giving the Fed an out necessarily. That a lot of people are just looking at higher rates, and so that's getting priced into that 10-year Treasury.
And as a reminder, we've been tracking this very closely, and ways to play this. So including TBT, a buying opportunity there, TMV, which is on leaderboard. So TBT on Swing Trader.
Right.
So this trade is playing out nicely for now.
Yeah, and both of those are basically short the bonds, which means that it's going to go in the same direction as the yield. Because if you're looking for a higher yield, higher rates, you're going to see the bond prices fall, and again that inverse relationship. So that's why we are using those. Both of these are kind of inverse to that, and the TMV actually has some leverage here. So that's why you're seeing a pretty strong move today.
Yes, up over 5% there, and this is leverage too. This is 2 times.
Right, 2 times. Yeah, exactly. We were a little bit more cautious on Swing Trader because again we have to manage our risk a little bit more in terms of making sure we're not taking too big of a hit on any of our positions.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's take a look at a name in the solar industry, JinkoSolar, JKS, up over 8% today. Some strong volume, and even leading up to today's breakout, Justin, some nice volume to the upside. We have an RS line blue dot, and trying to move out of this big consolidation, base next to base, whatever you want to call it here. But and JinkoSolar was far from alone. This whole group moving on some news today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's a few things going on here. I mean, this kind of benefited from 2 sides. A lot of the Chinese names were looking at, like they were bouncing back today. There was some news in terms of some of the investigations that they were doing into that rideshare program, Didi, and plus you've got the reopening of China. So that's going on after shutting down some areas there. But certainly in the solar area, what was driving a lot of these stocks was the fact that Biden was signing some executive actions to kind of, tamp down the tariff talk of some of these solar panels that are getting imported. So basically 2 years, hey, we're not going to be raising tariffs on these, and we're going to kind of allow some of these Southeastern Asian companies to import these these solar panels and not plug some tariffs on those. So and there was a few other executive actions that seemed like they were really kind of opening the door for the clean energy technology, whether it was use of the Defense Protection Act. So that just, again, it's a news item. I would argue, though, you have to be a little bit careful with these solar stocks, because as great as the news was today, a lot of these seem extended. I mean, you're looking at the JinkoSolar weekly chart here, and this is a pretty strong move from 50.
Up there.
It was just at 50 like 3 weeks ago, and now here we are at 67. That's pretty spectacular. So if you go back to the daily, I would argue sometimes you can't just rely on the pattern recognition giving you that nice dotted line. I would say that 60 was kind of an earlier entry there. You saw some volume come in on that day, and it's been a little bit tricky, but that seemed like an earlier entry, and you just have to be careful. Buying extended, the problem there is if you get into a normal pullback, it's going to be very easy to get shaken out of your stocks, and psychologically a lot of people have a hard time buying something back after they get shaken out.
Right. And our pattern recognition it has parameters. It's based on rules and algorithms. So sometimes it's not going to pick up on these nuances that we, with our human eyes can pick up on. But some of the things that you can use, even if you didn't have pattern recognition, how far is the stock above its moving averages, its 50-day or 10-week line, or even a shorter term moving average like the 21-day exponential. That can give you a little bit of a sense of, is this extended, whether or not it is breaking out.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great point, Allie, because again, at a certain point, you have to set your stop somewhere. Where is your line in the sand? And if it's going to be one of those moving average lines, you better know how far up above those moving average lines you are, because if a pullback to the 50-day moving average line is normal action for that stock, as it is for most stocks, you just have to know what kind of risk you're dealing with, and you can always size your position accordingly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, let's move on and take a look at Ashland ASH. Faded a little bit by the close, still up almost 3% for the day. Volume coming into this stock as well. And once again, it has that blue dot. You know, the chemical specialty group, it has been a standout lately. We're talking about more and more names from this group, Justin.
Yeah, it seems like, again, whether we're looking at the IBD Live watch list or the IBD Live ready list, even more names have been getting stacked here, and so that just tells you something. It's something that is worth paying attention to. So here, I would say, look, again, the pattern recognition gives you that nice line, but I think that there was an earlier entry, whether you do that downtrend line or just straight across from that line a week ago. I mean, that seems like an area of resistance that we did get through. And so while we got through that today, and got turned away at that previous high, I think that's worth noting. But I don't think this is a broken stock at this point. I think this is one worth watching. Again, especially since that industry group has a lot of other members. Now, we've talked about Albemarle and Livent, which are lithium plays. Those are in this group, but it's not just those. There's other industrial, these chemical makers, whether it's Tremor CC or Lin, LIN. There's a number in this area. So Ashland is not alone. CBT, that's one that we have on leaderboard. So there's a number of stocks in this area, and they all do very different things. But it's, so it's not like, it's a big thing going on in this one area.
They had their specialties within specialty.
Oh, maybe that's why it's called specialty chemicals. So very good point. But anyway, Ashland, I think, is it's still holding up. And even though it faded off its highs today, that was still a pretty big gain for the day. You had almost a 3% gain for the day. Plus, there was some volume behind it. If you look at the daily chart, you can see that there was a spike above average volume there. So even right now, I would say look at it compared to recent volume. If you look at today was the highest volume in the last, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I mean, a few months, so yeah, I'm going to stop counting right here before I mess it up. But yeah, I think that's worth noting that the volume was really high on this.
Sounds good, Justin. Okay, last but not least, let's take a look at Atkore, ATKR. This is in the building construction group on a little bit of a hot streak here. It had a breakout fake out, I like to call it, from a double bottom here, but it just looks like it needed one more pullback to shake out shareholders before moving higher again, off of its low of about 95. Now at almost 123 in, about 2 weeks.
Yeah. So another one that I would be a little bit careful on, because if you pull back to that weekly, here again, you might be looking at, oh, look, it just got above that 120 level, which seemed like an area of resistance. But this is a pretty big move in just a couple weeks' time. I mean, this was trading at 100 just a couple weeks ago, and now we're up 20% from that level. So I'd like to see this kind of settle down, maybe go sideways for a little bit. They don't always do what I want. So this is one that I've been watching for a while. Another one where it just seems like some of these construction, the stocks have been getting on our radar, especially the ones that are the non-residential. The non-residential has especially been getting our attention. So Atkore does fall into that area. Industrial markets, non-residential, and again, it looks a little extended at this point, because it had a 5% gain today. So just be careful of buying stocks extended in this market.
Yes. And Justin, of course, hindsight is always 2020, but with this upside reversal a couple of weeks ago, finding support right around key moving averages, it didn't have the volume there, but the price action pretty compelling. But did it seem like perhaps a little bit too early, since it did have that breakout just a couple weeks prior that really fizzled, that you needed to see a little bit more strength come in? Okay, now can it tighten up and present a new opportunity for us?
Well, and here's where you have to not just look at the chart, but also kind of remember everything that's going on. I mean, if you go to the daily chart there, I agree with you. I think that reversal looks very strong, especially the fact that you're getting it right there at the moving average lines. But as that pullback happened, one of the things that was a little tricky is, you were having a breakout, a follow-through day failure at that point, and then you were looking at potentially another follow-through day. So this was kind of a little bit in that in between. When was the 27th? Okay, so this is where the 27th was the follow-through day.
But it didn't
Okay,
have
so
volume.
yeah, it didn't have volume here. So, and I'll be honest, right now, one of the things that's bothering me the most about a lot of these stocks, and we're going through stocks and looking for things on Swing Trader, no matter what, the volume is really low on a lot of the stocks that we're seeing. And that makes it a little bit tougher to kind of get that conviction. One of the things I'll do is I will look again, what is it compared to recent activity? Or, has it had some heavy volume in the last few days? Or even I might do a pilot position, and then if it can get some volume coming in, that makes me feel a little bit better, and maybe I'll add to that pilot position. But it certainly was very low. Now, granted, it was right before a holiday. You have to take that into consideration.
Yeah.
People take off early, right? They're going to their vacation homes to have a great Memorial Day. So you will get that low volume, but it's always one of those things that's very tricky. But I would say that the price action did look very good on that day, and I can't remember if that was the day that we put it onto the watch list for leaderboard. But if not that day, it was right around that day.
Yeah. It was. I think you're right. All right, Justin. Well, thanks for digging a little deeper with me on Atkore. No, you never mind doing that. Good stuff there. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will have our leaderboard. Speaking of leaderboard watch list, we have our leaderboard scorecard coming up tomorrow after the close, 30 minutes after the closing bell. So we will see you there along with Dave and Ken. Tomorrow, once again, leaderboard.investors.com. You'll see the join link in the top banner if you are a leaderboard subscriber or trialist. So we'll see you there. And also tomorrow morning, returning to IBD Live, we have Dave Squared, David Saito Chung hosting, and David Ryan on the panel. That'll be a great show. Please join us, investors.com/IBD Live for all the details. We'll see you there, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.